afternoon, and thank you for joining the Women's Business Center, Richmond, located on the campus of Virginia Union University, and our weekly WQCN The Choice 105.3 radio show. Winning with WOW is the way we like to do it, and that is Women on Women. And today we have a special treat. You know, some people always ask me, why is it that you wear the stethoscope around your neck when you're not a medical doctor? Well, we're going to examine some things. We're going to put our hand on the pulse of what's going on in women entrepreneurship. And that is a reminder that we are here, that we might, allow some of our colleagues who are running successful businesses to share those nuggets, those kernels, those pearls of knowledge, that it might even spur those who are listening to look at that business plan that they've put on a shelf, or that idea that's been in their mind that they haven't done anything with, and become a business owner. And so today we have with us Dr. Kabul Kapur. She manages, well, you know what? I'm going to let you, Dr. Kapur, tell us your company and just a little bit about it.
Sure, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, I'm the principal of Kapur Energy, Environment, Economics, LLC, and that's precisely what we do. We do consulting in the areas of energy and environment, looking at those issues with an economics viewpoint. And we do detailed, high quality energy management and environmental studies.
Awesome, awesome. Well, one of the ways that I like to start our show, since it is about winning with WOW, if our listeners only had a few minutes to listen to our show, what would you want them to know about you as an entrepreneur or your company?
So I would say two things. One, I am living my passion or my dream, in the sense I always wanted to look at this question of solving environmental problems using an economics and financial perspective. And number two, taking the advice of an Indian economist who had said that if you have a passion, just remember there's about one or two questions that you can solve or put your mind to and succeed. So that's what I've done, and I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome, awesome. Very wise and sage advice. In fact, when we talked prior to coming to the show, and you told me about this Indian economist that said you can really put your mind to solving one or two problems in a lifetime, it has caused me to think even more deeply about the questions or the problems that I have put my mind to solving. And so that was an encouragement. So thank you for that gift, because I see it as a gift that you provided to me. But we also want to kind of get a feel before we get into the inner workings of your consulting practice in the area of energy and environment. I'd like to know a little bit about your story, a little bit about what led you to the point where you became the principal and owner or founder of your company. You know, you have a very interesting life path to where you are now. But can you share a little bit about that journey?
Absolutely. So I was born in Kanpur, India, which is a city of about 2 million people. And so it's not a small city, but it has some of that small town feel to it, with a lot of interpersonal relationships and so on. And then I went to the University of Delhi for my college. And after that, I did my master's at the University of California, Davis, and then a PhD in economics from Cornell University. Now, I don't want to go through each and every step, but give you the broad outlines. And so, where this idea about looking at environmental issues from an economics perspective came was when I worked for the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor in Indiana. I was a principal economist, and the issues that I was looking at that in that position was integrated resource planning issues and demand side management, which is another way of saying energy conservation in the context of utility planning.
And this was in California?
This was in Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
Yes. So this was in Indiana, and when I was doing this work, I realized, and I actually had some colleagues and other people who were working with me who said, this is one area where we don't see a lot of economists because it's planning, because it's looking at energy conservation in buildings, or that customers can employ strategies. Oftentimes there are a lot of engineers in the field, but not a lot of economists. So I began to think that this would be a good question to solve. How do you bring this about using successful economic strategies as opposed to just telling people, well, you should do this because it's good for the environment, or this is how you do it, but really something that would make sense for the bottom line. And so I had that idea, but after that, I did consulting over a period of time, but also taught at different universities in Michigan, and then finally at Virginia Commonwealth University here in Richmond. And while I was doing that, slowly, and I was successful to some extent, I was getting consultancies, working with different commercial firms, different consulting firms, looking at these issues. But I felt increasingly that I wanted to do this on a full-time basis. Back again to the idea there's only one or two things that you can really set your mind to and succeed in those. So, and I was very fortunate, this was in the early 2000s, I ran into Miss Milan Tran of the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce at a meeting.
Shout out to Milan Tran and Mr. Fan over
Absolutely.
at the AACC. Yeah.
They were very helpful in my journey. And she invited me to another event that the VACC was hosting, which was about 8A certification and SWAM business certification. And so I went to the event and learned about the 8A program, learned about SWAM certification, and I think even though I had already established a framework for the consulting that I was doing, in other words, getting your business license and making sure that all of your regulatory, tax, financial, credit, and all of those things were in order, I realized that the 8A program, which is a business development program, and these certifications would be helpful as I went through and tried to realize my goals. So,
well, some of the listeners may not know when you reference the 8A program in terms of business development. This is a program by the federal government supported by the Small Business Administration, correct?
that is correct.
And the inner workings of it, do you get paired with a mentoring company? Talk a little bit about the 8A
Sure.
program.
Sure. So, as you correctly mentioned, it is a business development program. It is trying to bring into its fold businesses that have already done some amount of work and have had some success, but are looking to grow or become bigger. And they help you with the development process. So there is an application process for the program, and you have to go through the application, and then once you get certified, it is a vehicle that federal agencies can use in the procurement. So if you go to a federal agency or you're trying to market to them, of course, it's going to be based on what value you bring to them. But then the 8A certification is an added incentive because there are specific 8A goals that federal agencies have to meet. And if you talk about, also having an 8A certification, that makes you that much more attractive to them.
Okay. And you mentioned SWAM. Again, we are a little familiar with it because as a business owner, when you're looking for those opportunities, when you're a small business, you have to find a place where you can stand on your toes and you're tall enough to compete. And oftentimes, if you have a large corporation that has a division that maybe does the same thing that you do, and then you're bidding against them, you might be in a position where you seemingly feel disadvantaged. But having various certifications puts you in a smaller pool so that, if there are set aside. So can you talk about SWAM? What does SWAM stand for?
Absolutely. So the SWAM program stands for Small Minority Owned and Women Owned Businesses Certification. And it is run by the Small Business Supplier Diversity SBSD office here in Virginia.
Commonwealth of Virginia.
And again, the program is to help small minority-owned, women-owned businesses and also micro businesses that are trying to get state-level contracts to be able to compete effectively. And there's two ways in which they can do that. One is, you mentioned primes, they can subcontract with prime contractors who have to fulfill certain goals that they have to meet for SWAM businesses, or there are, of course, set-asides for SWAM programs as well. So those are the two ways in which the program is very helpful to small businesses.
So if you look at it and say that, you had experience, you had success, you had the proper training, but your business would benefit from having those 8A and SWAM certifications because now someone is looking to do business with you. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. So that has helped your growth. So now let's talk a little bit about Kapur and the lifespan. When did you found your company? How long have you been in business? And talk a little bit about the expertise. You kind of hinted at it, but some of us look at economists and we say, okay, well, they can take numbers to mean almost anything, and I don't know because most of the projections are 10 years off or whatever. Is this a science or is this art? But help us to know a little bit more about and get a little bit more intimate with what you do in your company. How long have you been in business?
Sure. So I've been in business since 1999.
Okay.
And I started off as a sole proprietorship in 1999, but in 2013, we registered with the State Corporation Commission as an LLC. So now we are an LLC since 2013, and that was just because the business was growing, and beyond a certain point, just trying to do everything as a sole proprietor becomes difficult. And so we are an LLC now, and I had mentioned energy and environment from an economics perspective. But let me explain a little bit in detail some of the areas that we touch on as we do this work. So I had mentioned that we do, and we try to do, very detailed and high quality energy management and sustainability studies. So for example, if an agency comes to us and needs a sustainability plan to comply with federal executive orders, or they need to implement a plan that they already have, and they are looking towards help with either developing the plan or implementing it, we come in. And our economics expertise helps because, for example, if they're trying to develop a plan, there are hundreds of options out there that you can do in terms of conservation or in terms of waste management. But what makes the greatest sense for you? How do you rank them and select effectively something that works for you? We also do, I mentioned implementation. A part of that is doing walk-through energy and water audits of buildings.
Okay.
And we have people who do those audits and recommend energy and water conservation measures or renewable energy options. But another aspect which relates to the economics work we do is detailed economic and financial feasibility studies. So we want to make sure that your bottom line is impacted positively as a result of the project. We do also measurement and verification of the savings we promise you, so we don't just make recommendations, but we
Okay.
can verify.
Well, that's better than a lot of the consultants I used to deal with in the corporate arena. They would borrow your watch to tell you what time it was. But that's good to know that you do verification of the savings that you're projecting. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we at the Women's Business Center really try to focus on is identifying what are the resources that are needed when someone is starting a business. How are they growing their business? If there are trouble spots like a COVID downturn, how can we help them sustain their business? And then emerging from, this COVID shutdown arena, how do you get them back to thriving? And when I listened to one of the things that you said, you talked about starting as a sole proprietorship, which would be something as a business advisor, I would say, oh, don't do that. Did you have resources of, we call it technical assistance that we provide, being partially funded by the Small Business Administration. We are a nonprofit, so we don't charge for our services in large part. But did you have access to people to give you business guidance on structuring your company or helping you with your business plan? Help me to know a little bit about that piece, because I would have said, oh no, don't do a sole proprietorship. You have no legal protection. Go ahead.
Exactly, and which is one of the other reasons why we switched to an LLC at one point. So we actually had help from a number of sources. I did mention the Richmond SBA.
Okay.
And we developed a business plan, because once they award you the 8A certification, you're required to develop a business plan. So we developed a business plan, and that was a very useful exercise. I mentioned, of course, the SBSD in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Small Business and Supply Diversity office here in Virginia. And some of the other resources that we had access to, which we still use, are the PTACs, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center.
Okay.
And we've had a very successful and fruitful relationship with them for several years. They are very helpful with your procurement questions, your questions about bids that you can go after, bid matching services, seminars and conferences that they have on various topics. So PTAC was an excellent source. Another organization was SCORE, and
Shout out to the folks at Jim Martin, who was just in town.
exactly. And I was very fortunate because Charlottesville, Virginia actually has offices for all of these. Well, the PTAC office now, I think it's more a Central Virginia office, but at least when I was initially working on my business, they were all there. And then also the SBDCs, so the Small Business Development Centers, they had offices in Charlottesville. And when you run a business, you will find that you will have questions that arise, and they arise over a course of time that you need specialized help, expertise with. And all of these sources are extremely helpful in helping you solve those questions. And then the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce as well, that I mentioned before, they have procurement events and they help you network and meet with people. So all of these resources, really, it's not just when I started my business, but I've relied on them over the years.
What I really like about your story, Dr. Kapur, is how you stress the importance of being connected. like as you're talking, I'm thinking about this web, and along each line of the web, it articulates a need or an expertise or whatever. So you have your core strengths and your core capabilities, but you are networked with other resources, individuals, and organizations that help strengthens your business. And that's another reason why we try to partner with entities that will expand the horizons for our clients with the Women's Business Center. We have an advisory board, and we have three chambers that have a seat on that advisory council, and that is the Asian Council, the Hispanic Council, and the African American Council that are local to this area. But most of them cover a portion of the state or the whole state. But we're blessed to have them here local. And we try to help business owners remain connected. Don't just, help us get you in the business, but leverage the chamber relationships. My Tran sits at one of that council positions, and Michelle over the Hispanic Chamber, and Jana Hall from the Central Virginia African American Chamber. And we work with SCORE. We recently have done some collaborations with SCORE and SBDC and the SBA to try to help push that information towards them. So I'm curious, when you look at, if you were looking at the growth of your businesses, how much of your business would you say is strictly federal government versus any other business? Is all of it federal government?
So over the years, we've had contracts with the federal government, the state government, the local governments, and then also with private consulting firms. At this point in time, most of it is with the federal government. And we've worked with a number of federal agencies, the Department of Defense, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Interior, USDA, USTDA. I don't mean to keep going on, but a lot of the work that we are doing currently is with federal agencies.
And I want to go back and visit the 8A program.
Sure.
Just can you talk about that experience? Again, I've not gone through it. I know others who've gone through it. Business development in the terms of mentoring, but what is actually going on? Does your partner on I guess it's a larger company or whatever, do you get business because of it? How are they? Are they just there? You call them if you need them, or what's going on during the 8A certification program that you're going through? Tell me about that.
Sure. So the 8A certification program by itself does not pair you up with a mentor.
Okay.
That is if you select to go in the mentor protege program.
Okay.
So it's a choice that you make. I was not in a mentor protege program, but I have subcontracted with large businesses, and I did also during the 8A program, because one of the valuable tools in the 8A program are their trainings that they have. They have 7J training, and I attended several of those, and they tell you that to break into the federal marketplace, maybe you can't do it as a prime right away, but to get past performance or to get experience in the federal arena, try to pair up with large companies, which we did. And we've had a successful relationship with a large prime for almost a decade now. So what the large prime, of course, the key component, which I think if you match up with somebody who works well with you and you work well with them.
Okay.
I mean, that's a qualification, because not every prime is good for a business, and they are selective also. But if you pair up well, very key thing that you get from that is past performance.
Okay.
And when you're going for prime contracts, which we do now, that is a requirement that sometimes small businesses find hard to satisfy, because it's like, I'm applying for a new job, but do you have experience? But I'm applying for a new job. But the past performance piece is really helped with that.
Okay.
And then the other trainings that the 8-day program has, things like financial training, things like how you should come up with fully burdened rates. There's a whole number of trainings that they provide that are extremely useful. And one of the lessons that I learned, which I would like to share with businesses, and I did not know that, and I wish I had at the start of the program, was don't get attached to your concept of which agency, I mean amongst the federal agencies, is right for you. So, I have the economics background, the environmental background, and in my mind I had, well, this is the agency that's going to work for me.
Okay.
And I think I wasted some time in the 8-day program by just focusing on one or two agencies that I thought would absolutely work out for me. I think that you should, of course, try, but if it doesn't work out, then there are so many. I mean, there are scores of federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, and you have limited time and resources to make the switch earlier rather than later.
Gotcha.
So that's a lesson learned that I think might be helpful for other businesses.
Well, I mean, again, you're laying a framework which is almost like a blueprint, and it's good that you are providing that feedback to people who may not know, because undoubtedly that program has been sustained over time, and without a doubt, it's going to be useful. I guess as we begin to kind of bring things to closure, what do you do for fun? How do you let off your steam? I mean, when I think of accountants and lawyers and economists, it seems like you guys are just bottled up with so much knowledge. What do you do to have fun? And don't say have a Diet Coke.
I wouldn't say that. So I love cooking, and both my husband and I, actually, we cook together. And he's a professor also, so I think it helps both of us when we come back home and we want to take our mind off, whatever happened during the day, just to cook a good meal. I know this is again my environmental background, but I love nature. And so we have a number of bird feeders in our home, and we do gardening, and our backyard is filled with wonderful birds and butterflies and hummingbirds, because we both love to do that, cultivate a garden and make it nice for them to visit. And then we go for long walks and hikes. We live in Charlottesville. There are many hiking trails. So I think a lot of what we do in our extra time is also determined by the fact that we're very fortunate to live in that city.
Well, very gracious as well. I have enjoyed our talk today and our time together. I hope that our listeners have also enjoyed that. The Women's Business Center in Richmond is here for you. We hope to continue to do Winning with WOW so that our women entrepreneurs will, glean something that they can apply to their business and be successful. You can reach us at thewbcrichmond.org or on our socials at thewbcrichmond. And we look forward to connecting with you next time on Winning with WOW with Dr. Danni. Have a good day.